Hey everyone, Dr. Wolf here. It's time for a lesson on how we get rhythm in music. And the way we get rhythm in music is basically by having notes last different amounts of time. And so we call that duration. Now we're going to have a look at a table of some different durational symbols. You'll notice at the very top here is just a circle, an oval note head. Now that can mean a pitch on the staff, but in general, what that means is it lasts for 4 beats, meaning 4 of the pulses that we feel as we tap our foot or nod our head to a piece of music. A whole note is the name of this oval, and it lasts for 4 beats or 4 counts. And you'll notice that the symbol is just the oval. And as we go down this list, we'll notice that there's really just one change as I go down each category of durational symbol. So to get from whole note to half note, I add a line onto my oval. Now these lines are called stems, and if they're going upwards, they're always on the right side. If they're going downwards, they're always on the left side. And it doesn't really matter which way they go. It just depends on whether they're going to bump into something else in your musical score, on whether they go upwards or downwards. So from whole note, just an oval, to half note, which is an oval with a stem going one direction or another on it. And a half note, of course, if a whole note is worth 4, a half note is just worth half of that. So 2 beats for a half note. Then we can see that as we go to our next thing, we make one change, one new symbol, only one change. And so we go from half note to quarter note by just taking that oval and the stem, but filling in the oval so that it's solid black now. So those are quarter notes. Again, the stem can go in either direction. And quarter notes are worth 1 beat or 1 count because they're a quarter of the length of a whole note. Next, we have eighth notes. Now you'll notice the note head is still there with its filled in oval, just like a quarter note. The stem is still there, and now we've added what's called a flag. And you'll notice that the flags always go right, even while the stems will alternate which side they're on depending on the direction that they're facing. I always like to think of it like the wind is always blowing from the left side to the right side of the page, and so the flags are always pushed to the right side. Now, an eighth note is really 2 notes per beat, or a half of a beat, right? Half of a quarter note. Again, if we're thinking everything in comparison to a whole note, we get 4 counts here. 8 of these guys will fit in that amount of time. And then the next durational symbol we get is a 16th note. And you'll notice this has all the things that the 8th note has, the filled in note head, the stem, and the first flag, but we just add a flag to show that it's a different durational symbol, meaning 16th note. And 16th notes, there are 16 of these in the time of a whole note, which is basically, if you're thinking as 1 count or 1 beat, it's 4 of these per beat. So after that, you can get faster and faster and faster, as fast as you like, as long as your musicians can play it. And all we do from this point on is continue to add flags. So can you imagine what the next faster note would be? We've gone from a whole note to a half note to a quarter note to an eighth to a 16th. And you guessed it, going on, we go to the 32nd note. And the only difference between the 16th note and a 32nd note is you'd have all of this plus 1 more flag. And then from 32nd, we would go to 64th and again just add a flag. And for basically there to infinity, we're always just adding a flag if we want to go faster. Now all those faster notes are pretty rare. You can do a whole lot of cool stuff with just going up to 16th notes and maybe the occasional 32nd. Now let's try some of this out in some actual music and see how it works. So here's our music score, and we're going to have a look here. I'm going to put in a whole note. We're just going to say that each of these boxes, which are called measures, for now, each of these hold 4 counts, which is kind of like how most pop music works. Most of the music we hear today on the radio has 4 beats. And when we get to meter, we'll talk about that in more depth. But basically, we count to 4, and then we start over and count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So each of these boxes is going to hold our 4 counts that we're used to. And so I am going to put a B. Not that it matters. It could be any note we want, but the idea is that this B is going to be worth, because it's just the oval, it's a whole note, which means it gets 4 counts, 4 beats. And that works kind of like this. You have your first beat happen right lined up with when the note starts. So you'd start playing this B, and that would be your 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get 1 coinciding with the attack of the note, and then you'd get beat 2 and beat 3 and beat 4 following it. Now let's see if we can fill up our next measure with half notes. So each of these is going to be 2 beats, right? So here's a half note. Here's another one. The first one is going to start on the first beat and last through the second. Remember, it lasts for 2 beats. And then the second one is going to start on the third beat of this measure and then last through the fourth, because we know that a half note is equal to 2 beats. Here's some quarter notes. All right, so each of these, as you might remember, are worth 1 count or 1 beat. So if I have 4 counts to do in my measure, I'm going to start on 1, and then the second one, they're each 1 beat, but since we're trying to count to 4 all the time, that guy lands with the second beat, third beat, fourth beat. And then we get our 8th notes, right? We should get 8 of those in a measure. Now, what we saw initially was each 8th note had a single flag. We should get 2 of these per beat. So in a way, they're a half a beat each. So depending on how much math you want to think, an 8th note is either 0.5, or I always just like to think there's 2 of these fit in a quarter note, right? 2 of those in the space of one of these. Or you might think whole note is 1 speed, half note is twice as fast, quarter note is twice as fast as half note, 8th notes are twice as fast as quarters. So each time we go from one measure to the next, we actually double the speed that we're playing. So we don't have a convenient way yet to count these. So a nice way to count these is to have a word to say, or a syllable to say, for these notes that are in between the beats. Because it's 2 per beat. This guy lands on beat 1. This one's in between. So 1 and then it's a little bit busy for your eye to see all these flags. So a lot of the time, if we have a whole lot of 8th notes in a row, we have a convention that we take those 2 flags and turn them into something called a beam. And a beam looks a variety of ways, but generally it looks like this. So I took my 2 flags, and basically it's like we can imagine we took those 2 flags, 1 on each note, and tied them into this one nice straight line called a beam. 1 beam is the same thing as 1 flag. 2 beams, 2 flags, and so forth. So this is also, and it's much cleaner for your eyes, this is also another way to write 8th notes. All right, so this should last for 4 beats. These should each last for 2. These should land on every beat. And then these guys should be twice as fast as the beat. So let's just play this and see what our rhythm sounds like. You might even pause the video and see if you can clap this right from the beginning, just to see if the system is already making sense for you. But here I go. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you guys get the idea? I'm going to play it again. And that's basically how it works. Now, we did have one other durational symbol that we had in our example table. So let me just show you what 16th notes look like on the staff. Now, how many should we get if we have a measure that fits 4 counts? How many 16ths do we fit in that much space, the space of a whole note? Well, let's see. There's 16 16th notes, and conveniently the computer is grouping these in sets of 4 so that they're real clear for my eye. So I immediately see, oh, there are 4 things here, and there are 4 16ths in a quarter. So I'm really seeing, oh, 1 beat, 2nd beat, 3rd beat, 4th beat. And one way to speak that that's kind of nice is to say 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, and so forth. And if that doesn't make sense, there's much more depth coming for that type of counting as well. But for now, just be okay seeing this and knowing that sometimes we group 16th notes in sets, and often, to make them clearer, we put beams on them, but if they were just flags, they would look like that. And you can see it's very busy for your eye to have to deal with all those flags and all that information. So instead, it's much cleaner to put the beams on them. All right, let's hear how that goes now. Okay, so that's just a basic idea of how durational symbols create rhythm. Now, it's really fun to just play yourself, maybe in your music notation program, and see if you can create some new rhythms by mixing these different notes together. So you might still, I don't know, is it a little boring to start with a whole note the whole time? Might be nice to end with a whole note, but let's start with our 2 halves again. And maybe instead of having 2 halves in a row, we could have a half and 2 quarters. That adds up to 4, right? This gets my first 2 beats, and then this guy lands on my 3rd. This guy lands on my 4th. Yeah, so I get my all 4 beats there. That might sound kind of cool. And let's do a little more mixing of quarters and halves. Lots of music does all kinds of interesting things with just those 2 rhythms. So 1st beat, 2nd and 3rd beat, 4th beat. That should work. And maybe let's do a little bit of quarters. And how about, instead of all 4, let's make the last 4 into 8th notes. And I still like having my beats separated out here. And one more measure. Okay, I'm gonna get funky here, you guys. Here we go. 4 16ths, 2 8s, a quarter, and 2 more 8s. Okay, let's see how I did making up my own rhythm here. Cool. So all this is doing is varying the speed of the note because of how long they last. And then we try to have a kind of graph with our music notation that kind of has a general repeating set of counts that is called meter, which we'll learn later on. But you can really play with this and have a lot of fun just making different rhythms and maybe even having some of your notes go up and down. If you just play around, you'll learn a lot about how the system works. And the computer program in general, most notation programs, won't let you mess up too bad. So just go for it and see what you get. All right, so the last thing is, the cool thing about this system is, because really all it's saying is this guy is twice as long as that guy, right? So a whole note is 4, a half note is 2 beats, and so a 2-beat note should be going twice as fast as a 4-beat note, right? The great thing about this is I can change the speed and still get the same rhythm. Right now, this score is set really close to 60 beats per minute. That means that every count is about 1 second long. It's actually a tiny bit slower right now, but that's okay. So about 1 second apiece. Let's see, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now my song's slower, but the rhythm is the same. So the relationships between the notes remain the same regardless of whether you're going fast or slow. So let's take it up to, let's say we get 120 beats per minute. So that means we've got 2 beats a second. Ready? Here we go. And here's my rhythm that we invented at that faster speed. And it's starting to sound a little bit like something, I don't know, a drummer might do on a snare drum or something. Or we add some notes in there. Start playing around. You can be almost totally random with the notes, and with a good rhythm, it'll still sound pretty cool. Okay, who knows? It's already starting to sound like a song, right? So it just takes a little bit of rhythm and you kind of play with a few pitches and you're already making music. So play around a little bit and then move on in through the lectures. Have fun.